welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you two different ways to make your flying geese units. I'm going to share some tips to help make them more accurate. We're going to be making them one at a time. We're also going to be making them four at a time. And I also have a PDF download cheat sheet to help you out with different sizes. So let's go ahead and get started with the one at a time method. So for the one at a time method, we're going to need one piece of fabric that is already cut to 3.5 by 6.5, and then you're going to need two pieces that are 3.5 inch square. Now the first tip that I have when working with flying geese units is to either pre-starch your fabric, or I like using this Mary Ellen's Best Press. This is a starch alternative. It's called sizing. It's just going to help give your fabric a little bit more structure when you're working with your flying geese units. In order to use this, it's really easy. You just take your fabric, and you can do this on one or two sides. I typically just do it on one side, but you're just going to spray that fabric, and you can get it pretty wet. The wetter you get it, the stiffer that it's going to be. Then you're going to take your iron. I'm using my Laura Star. I love this iron. And we're just going to press it until it gets dry. And so I actually will just sit here and press back and forth. The Laura Star has really good steam, so you can steam this as well. And then I will usually flip it over and press it again. And you can spray again if you want extra. I typically only do one side. I feel like that's enough for these units. But if you want it to be extra stiff, a little bit more starch feeling, you can spray both sides. And all you do is just press it till it's dry. That's going to help give our fabric, as you can see when we pull on our bias, it's got a lot more structure. That's going to help everything stay just a little bit nicer and more accurate. So the first thing we're going to do is just take our squares, and we're going to draw a line from corner to corner on the wrong side. And I'm going to use a friction erasable pin for this, but since it's in our seam, it doesn't really matter. You can use any pin that you like. And also, if you have diagonal seam tape on your machine, you don't need to do this step. But for accuracy purposes, I do like to draw lines on the wrong side of my fabric. Next, we're going to take our larger rectangle and one of our squares. We're going to place this square right side down on our rectangle. And I like to put in a pin just so that it doesn't shift around. And then normally you're just going to sew from corner to corner right on this line. Now I actually like to sew just a hair to the outside of that line. That's going to give me a little bit more flexibility when I flip this back, and it'll just help keep my block a little bit more accurate. So here you can see that I've sewn just right to the outside edge of that line. I'm going to go ahead and press it just to set that seam, and as you can see my line has disappeared. And then I actually like to press this before I trim away that excess. That way I can use the fabric that's already there as my guide, and I can line that up when I'm pressing it and just make sure that I have everything nice and straight. Next, I'm going to trim 1/4 inch away from that stitch line. So I just put my 1/4 inch line right on my stitch line and trim. You can actually keep this for another project if your flying geese units are large enough. And then now we've already pressed that out and we know it's nice and accurate. The next thing we're going to do is take our other square, and we're going to place that right sides down with our diagonal line running in the opposite direction. Again, I'm going to place a pin just to hold it in place. Take this to my machine and sew right on that line, or if you're like me, just a hair to the outside edge. And you can see right here on my machine, I've got my diagonal seam tape right on there, and I use that lining up the corner of my line right there on that red line. And if you'd like, you can even just scoot it just a hair over so that you can sew right to the inside edge of that line. But that way when you're sewing, you don't necessarily have to draw that diagonal line. You can use your diagonal seam tape. But if you're new, I suggest drawing a line. It will help make your blocks more accurate. Again, I'm going to trim 1/4 inch away from my stitched line, and then again, we'll just press that. And I just realized I forgot to press it before I trim it. You can do it either way. I actually do prefer to do it the other way. Next, we're going to take our piece and just trim up any craziness that might have happened while we were sewing. Now, since our original piece was 3.5 by 6.5, I'll use that line as my guide. You also want to make sure that your point right here is 1/4 inch away. So I've got my point right here, and that is right along that 1/4 inch line, so we're pretty good. This actually looks really accurate, but I'm going to go ahead and just give it a quick trim anyways, just to make sure. I didn't even cut off any on this side, and that's really all we cut off on the top. And here's our one at a time Flying Geese unit. And you can make these in any size. My PDF download has a variety of sizes available in it, so you don't have to do the math. All right, let's take a look at how to do the 4 at a time method. I'm actually going to be using some footage from one of our Sew With Me blocks because I did a really good job of explaining how to do that there. So let's go ahead and roll that footage. So we're going to need an I square and 4 F squares. You're going to want to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on the wrong side of your F squares. And we're just going to take 2 of those and line them up on opposite corners of our I square. I am going to stick a pin in there just to hold everything in place. We're going to now take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew 1/4 inch away from that center line on both sides. We'll come back and cut it in half right along that drawn line. All right, here's what that looks like. Stitch line 1/4 inch. Now we're going to just trim that right along that line. Just going to set those seams and then we're just going to press these back. So you have 2 of these units. And now we're going to take our remaining F squares and place them now on our one last corner that we have here, just like that. And we're going to again sew 1/4 inch away on both sides of our drawn line. Here's what our units should be looking like. We're going to go ahead now and just cut again on the line that we drew. And then now we can just press these. I'm going to set that clapper on those for just a minute. And then now we have our Flying Geese units and we just need to trim these up. And I wanted to show you a little trick with the ruler because I don't have that exact same size ruler. So I'm going to use my larger one and I'm taking my points on my ruler and I've got my 2.5 inch line here and my 4.5 inch line here. So I just want to scoot that up so that those points are hitting that intersection. The other thing I want to look at is that my 1/4 inch line right here is right at the point of that fabric. So I'm going to just scoot that up and adjust down here so that I'm getting the most accurate. As you can see, I have plenty of wiggle room here. And then I can make my first 2 cuts. So we know that this point right here isn't going to get cut off because it's 1/4 inch away. Then I can flip it over and now I can use my 2.5 by 4.5 inch lines again. I've also got this diagonal line to help me out a little bit. And I can trim off the rest. So now we have a perfect Flying Geese unit for this block, even if our sewing was a little bit wonky. And there you go. That's how you make the either 1 at a time or 4 at a time Flying Geese units. Don't forget to download the free PDF. It will be linked below this video. And check out my Quilting Quick Tips playlist here on YouTube for other helpful tips on how to make your quilty life easier.